All right, so for cleansing, when you're ready to cleanse, there is several things to consider and kind of where to start. Starting to cleanse, the first area that really ultimately should be cleansed is your gut. A lot of health issues really stem from a toxic gut or a stagnant gut. So if we're activated and we're building, part of that for the gut really is also if you, I guess, going back to making sure that we're the gut, if you've been blocked up, if you've been only regular with one bowel movement a day or less, then more than likely you have leaky gut, and that comes from all that bowel material sitting in your gut for an extended period of time, too long. It gets hard, it gets full of bacteria, it gets full of that stagnation, and it kind of gets pushed up against the lining of the gut as more stuff gets added. So over time, that hardness and really pushes up against the lining of the gut, and it can start poking holes, creating a weakness in the gut, but weakness in the tissue. But when it starts getting holes, then what happens is every time you have a bowel movement, then whatever toxicity that you're trying to eliminate, or the bacteria that the impacted bowel creates as it rots and it sits there, it actually then, that bacteria and parasites, being smart organisms, they will actually find the trap doors and go back up into your bloodstream, leaving your gut. It goes right into the fluids, so the blood and the lymph and everywhere else where it really shouldn't be. So ultimately, I always tell my clients, if you have leaky gut, you're recycling your toxicity. Every time you have a bowel movement, things go push through there. Yes, you have some that come out, but you're also pushing things out through those holes. And it turns out, we have a lot of dirty blood then, an acidic environment for the blood where the parasites can thrive. If it has plenty of bacteria, and then food particles, undigested food particles, bacteria, yeast, it just starts forming and starts congesting the blood, which makes it a friendly environment for the parasites to thrive. So I guess that would be more of the activating and building part before you start cleansing, is making sure dialing in. Is that a factor? But there is a solution there. There is something called ion gut health, or something similar to bone broth, but with ion gut health, it actually seals the lining, so there's no more holes. And then also with the astringent factor, where it tightens and tones the junctures of the gut, and changes the pH and neutralizes the acidity out of the gut. So it makes it a more friendly environment for the good flora and a less friendly environment for the parasites. And then stops all that toxicity flooding into the lymph and the kidney, or the lymph and the blood. So that is another little precursor, but get that established, then it's a matter of starting to cleanse. There's different things to cleanse. There's bowel laxatives, herbal support to get the bowels moving. Once you have the holes sealed up, then it's about getting it moving more regularly. And so when you think of parasites, we are a natural host. Humans are a natural host of parasites. And I'll go into another section about specifically on the different parasites and what herbal support to use. But just knowing that we're a natural host, the human body is. So we come into contact with them, we absorb them, they come into us, whatever. Our bodies will naturally eliminate them, as long as those elimination channels are open and there's no trap doors or escape routes for them. So if they're there, not to worry. That when you activate and build and get things flowing better, you'll start naturally getting rid of them. But then it is, so checking in with that. So, okay, once you start cleansing, getting the bowels moving in a healthy way, making sure you're drinking plenty of water, which is part of the other steps, but that will keep things flowing. And then we check in. Is there still some more support that's needed? So there's some essential oils that could be used that are for physically detoxing. And what I liked is doing the raindrop therapy with 9 essential oils that are applied to the spine. A lot of microbials, a lot of toxins settle into the joints of the spine, the vertebrae. And so by applying those essential oils along the spine, that really helps cleanse out the nooks and cranny of the free radicals and the toxins and the pathogens that settle in. Getting those out of the spine and out of the central nervous system, out of that tissue, and with everything working right, then they'll get flushed out, whether it's through your kidneys or through your bowels. That's a great therapy to have done, and very relaxing and very healing, using the power of the essential oils along with the massage. There's the ionic foot bath, which is more for just the heavy metals and toxins throughout. You're really not going to see, I don't think any parasites coming out through the bottoms of your feet. I've never seen that. But then if you go into the herbal support, depending on what you got going on as far as parasites go, this is part of the process. Is you may or may not see them in your bowels if you pay attention to your bowels, but if you know you've had parasites, I've had a lot of people look for them, and there's some that can be seen in the bowels, but majority of the parasites themselves are microscopic, only can be seen in my microscope, or they're if we see them at all. But there are some, with the protozoas or just the very small ones, you're just not going to see. But if you're doing the right herbal support, you're going to wipe them out, and they will exit out once they've been handled with the herbals or the essential oils. They will start flooding, coming out of the bowels or your urine. So making sure that just being ready for that, I guess. I've had a lot of clients that they have had seen them in their bowels, and that kind of is freaking them out. But mentally being prepared and knowing that that's what your ultimate goal is, so it's a good thing. Then there's, again, I guess there's different herbal support based on what parasite it is. There's a difference between the flukes that can be liver flukes, pancreatic flukes, and uterine flukes, versus the tapeworms, the pinworms, roundworms. There's several different, which we're going to go into in another segment on exactly what herbs to use for what parasite. But to know that there's some different supports, and there is a way to work with each kind, or each type, I guess. And what's really important, I guess, I want to go into is the general rule of thumb that I hear from a lot of places, a lot of people, is short bursts of cleansing for parasites. 10 days on, 10 days off, 10 days on, 10 days off. And I think that is, a safety thing. I don't know. It's just really because a lot of people jump into it before they've done any of the other prep work. So you don't want to do heavy cleansing. You really don't want to do any cleansing if you haven't done the steps A and B. So for the most part, but that's frustrating for those who actually try it, I guess, is because they have to continue to do it. They have to keep going at it. They still have different issues or health issues, and specifically with parasites showing up in different ways. But what's really important is to know that if you've done the right steps and you've prepped yourself and got yourself ready for the cleansing, then you're strong enough to cleanse. parasites are a live microorganism that's living in the body, and there's a life cycle to the parasites where they're laying eggs, and just, between the adult ones and all the baby ones growing up, and it's just a vicious life cycle that you really need to cover all of that, the whole life cycle of the parasites, to ensure that you've done your best to get rid of the parasites that are present in the body. So my suggestion is, once you've done the prep work, going 90 to 120 days, hitting it hard enough, long enough to rid the body of whatever parasite issues that you've got going on. So it is a hard and long process, but sticking with it, being consistent, will lead to a better success, especially if you've done the A and B steps. So that is a really important thing to distinguish between what most people do and say that they do versus what I recommend. But it really comes to doing the whole ABCs of wellness. If you've done the prep work, you're ready and strong enough to do that type of cleansing. And that can be said for any of the other cleansing, not just for parasites. If you're full of heavy metals, if you are, working or living in a toxic environment where there's a lot of chemicals and heavy metals or toxins, that you're going to hit it hard enough. There's definitely herbal support, chelation. I know they've done a lot of, there's IV stuff, chelation, but the oral chelation is really significant and important to do. But there's a process and protocol for that. And once we get into the actual steps of, I'm going to go into the steps of cleansing, like I said, for which type of parasite, and what my suggestions would be. In the next section, we'll post something along with that, with the chelation part. It's not necessarily for the parasites, but it is definitely important to do that correctly as well with the heavy metals. And the same can be said, though, with the prep work. You need to be strong enough before you start pulling out a lot of heavy metals, or else you're going to just do more damage than good. So with all that said, I think that covers it for now, but next time I will go into specifically what parasites for what herbs for what parasites, and a little more in detail, and walk you through an actual protocol or process of eliminating the parasites. All right, thanks for listening.